Brilliant. Thanks, Ben.
Let the controversy begin.
I hope so. Fair fight, gents. Let's start with some introductions, who you are and what you do. Jeremie, if we could start with you, and then we'll make our way back towards me.
So my name is Jeremie Habib. I am the founder and CEO of a software company called Gigwell. We build software that streamlines the booking and touring process for musicians, DJs, live entertainers in general. Currently work with about 300 agencies worldwide, and just handle all the payments, contracts, and all the back office stuff for artists.
Thank you.
My name is Michel. I work for David Lewis Productions, Dutch agency. Also have an office in Hong Kong. In the business now for 10 years, working for David Lewis for 4 years. And yeah, that's me.
Hi, my name is Arsit. I'm CEO of AG Productions out of Thailand. We produce festivals both in Thailand and Myanmar, along with the Ultra events in Thailand.
Jason Swamy, NetEase Cloud Music, Roboheart, Wonderfruit, but I think what's more relevant is that I might be a little bit more different than everyone here, is that I've been a DJ, club owner, festival owner, buyer, and an agent, so hopefully I can be empathetic in this environment.
Hopefully.
Cody Chapman. I work with Paradigm based out of New York. I've been there for around 7 years. Prior to that, I was a promoter in Canada. I represent artists such as DJ Snake, Miha, Zed's Dead, Swamy, Mala, Rez, Borgor, DJ Mustard, many others.
Andrew Goldstone, Deckstar Management, and I manage Don Diablo and Blau.
Andrew, can I just turn to you quickly as well and ask, where does your company operate in Asia, and do you have an Asian office?
We do not have an Asian office, but I mean, you know, I think we talk about Asian issues and suggestions about what to do in the market reasonably frequently. Everybody, you know, all the managers obviously have different experience and different contacts, you know, I'm going to go back, having been here, and kind of share what I learned. I mean, it would be great to have an Asian office, but I mean, me and my day-to-day are at the New York office, so we just started that. I think, you know, we now have a London office as well. I think Asia's probably next, but I don't know when that would transpire.
Same question for you, Cody. Do you have an Asian office, and do you operate in all of the territories in Asia?
We do not currently have an Asian office, but this market is a high priority market for us, and we represent nearly all of the artists that we do throughout all of Asia, China included. Cool.
Same question for you, Michel.
Yeah, we got an Asian office based in Hong Kong. The office has been there for 8 years. I think that was one of the things that already started from the beginning, you know, was the Asian market always has been one of the priorities for David Lewis Productions. So that resulted 8 years ago into an office in Hong Kong.
I'm going to actually come to you first, Arsit, and instead of asking the agents how they price a value for talent, I'm going to ask you how you price a budget for the DJs and artists that perform at your festival.
Well, for the festivals, I mean, there's a little more flexibility, but we do have our limitations, you know, and certain agents say, you know, this is what we want, you know, it's going to be a straight no, you know, because obviously it doesn't convert into ticket sales. And with the markets that we work with, you know, being quite sponsorship based, there are limitations because the ticket prices are not as high as Europe or the US per se.
Do you find that when a big brand name goes on the advert for your event that the agents try and put the fees up?
Yes and no, depending on who it is, but like I said, there's exceptions to the rule, and we play by that game.
And Jason, turning to you with a promoter hat on, how do you start the budgeting process to put that pool of money together for DJs and artists at your event?
We start with zero budget. We start with taste. So it's what we want to accomplish based on the brand. So what does the brand want to achieve? Can we develop a programming that actually matches the brand? And then we talk to the agencies and go, hey, what can you recommend? What's available? And how can you help us achieve the goals to match that aesthetic?
How do they answer that question?
That's a funny one. Generally, they're pretty helpful. I mean, in particular, Paradigm, I have great experience working with them. They're very innovative and generally provide me with lots of good insight.
We feel the same way about you.
Love you.
It's too early to hug. So Cody, when you're looking at the market, how do you set the rates? What's the process by which you determine the value of a DJ or an artist in Asia?
We have a big dartboard in our conference room.
And who goes in the middle?
No, there's no set value for any artist. There's no set value for anything. Everything is fluid, you know, depending on what the show is, when the show is, where the show is. You know, an artist could go and play a private event for $1 million and go play, you know, somewhere else for half that one day. You know, it doesn't make the artist value $1 million or half that. Everything needs to be taken into consideration, and that's one of the things that as this market matures, they're going to realize more and more.
Andrew, same question for you. Do you set a rate based on the market, or do you wait for someone to put a figure on the table?
No, I mean, I'm a firm believer in letting the people who specialize in an area do their job. So, you know, when Cody would come to me and say, you know, we got an offer for X in this market, you know, my expectation is simply that Cody has beat the guy up, which I know he has, and gotten the best price. And at that point, it really just comes down to a question of, you know, what's the rest of the lineup? What's the billing? What's the slot? You know, it's you know, to that point, it's never just, well, not never. It's almost never just about the fee. You know, there have been lots of big fees that we would say no to because, you know, the other acts on the lineup just didn't feel like the right fit, and it didn't feel like the kind of thing that, you know, it didn't feel like the right look for the market. So, but, you know, I always, you know, I trust in the agent, and you know, I don't want to be the guy saying, well, I'm not playing X market unless you get me, you know, 2 times that. It doesn't benefit me. They know what the market will bear better than I do, so I rely on their judgment.
Michel, is price setting a partnership or a battle?
Sorry?
Is price setting for talent a partnership with promoters or a battle?
Yeah, 100%. It's always about, you know, finding the common ground. So also, you know, with the price settings, that's not really like a price setting. So we just see, you know, what kind of request is it? Is it a festival, stuff like that? Which kind of slot are you talking about? But yeah, I think in the end, it's all about finding the common ground with your promoter.
And Jeremie, you probably have quite a unique insight. I'm guessing you can look into the back of your system if you want to, and you can see if there's trends or parity between US, Europe, and Asian prices. What do you see when you take a peek?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely do look at that, and it's pretty interesting. I mean, there's a pretty big disparity between, you know, larger, high-profile artists and more emerging artists in, you know, secondary, tertiary markets. Specifically, you know, it seems like the top tier typically have a, you know, 2 to 3 to, in some cases, up to 5x multiple, especially in markets like Asia. And, you know, smaller artists may, you know, take a 30% or up to a 50% discount. So it's kind of interesting based on kind of the caliber of artists, how things are priced. Jason,
do you feel like you're getting a 50% discount?
Never. But in all seriousness, I find that there's fundamentally a flawed system, right? Because, no pun intended, there's an agency conflict, right? Because the agents, their incentive is driven by percentages, and it's a transactional process, and so your incentive personally is to drive up the price as much as you can, and to incentivize yourself. And there's a risk asymmetry. So what happens is the agent and the artist bears no risk, and on the other side, the promoter and the venue bears all the risk. Now, there's only that many fish in the barrel. And after you shoot all the fish and there's no fish left, what happens?
I've got to try and follow that analogy somehow. Arsit, do you think when we're talking about fish, but do you find it possible to maintain a profitable business based on the way the fish are being priced?
Not always, you know, with people like Cody, which makes my life a little difficult sometimes. But usually I think there's a fine balance, you know, in all seriousness. And I think that there's a risk and reward factor, you know, on both parts, because we pay too much and, you know, people are not going to be attending. It's a bad show for the artist. It reflects back to the agent, obviously. So I think that, I mean, generally there's not really such a big issue, I would say, on that part.
So Andrew, coming to you, when you sit back and look at your talent, when you sit back and look at the markets, do you set a price or a strategy based on growing a market and looking long, medium, and short term, or is it all short term? Is it all now? Is it all transactional?
No, I mean, I think, you know, it's a balance. I want to get a, you know, I want to get a good fee, but I'm absolutely looking at what does this mean, you know, next year and the year after. If the reality is this is the right promoter in the right market and they can't pay as much as somebody else, but that somebody else is going to put on a shitty show, I'd rather take a little less and go with the right guy and play the right show, because that's that's the best step forward in that market. I think that certainly governs thought in Asia. I mean, there are other situations where it may not be as much of a concern, because you know that if you're playing in the States and you play one show and it doesn't happen to do that well, but all the other shows are great, you can afford a couple mistakes here and there if the fees are great and you just want to say, okay, well, I'm going to go pick up a bag of money. But I think in emerging markets, in newer markets, those initial opportunities are so important, A, in setting value, B, in developing a fan base, that you really have to be super thoughtful about what you're doing. And again, so much of that decision-making process is about the conversation with the agent, and the agent saying, this guy did a couple other shows for me, they were great, they know how to treat artists well, the shows were really good, they know how to promote. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear that these guys know what's up in their market and they will deliver a good show. If that means we're taking 10 or 20% less than we could get somewhere else, I don't give a shit. Like, I'd rather play a great show and develop a partner in the market.
So Cody, what's more important to you as an agent, great show or big check?
Well, it's always a show.
Good.
And the check. But no, in all seriousness, we're never just like looking at the next play. We're looking 2 years ahead. What are we doing in 2018 to get to where we want to be in 2019? What are we trying to do in 2020? Do we want to build career artists that can do this forever, or are you trying to pick up a bag of money somewhere? And not to jump away from this question, but to the point that artists don't take any risk. The promoters obviously take a heavy financial risk anytime you're doing a show, but in putting an artist on any show, the artist bears risk as well. You're standing up there in front of all the people that should be fans, future fans that you want to make. You're putting an artist's brand towards a show's brand, and there's risk involved in that too.
That's a due diligence risk, not a financial risk.
If you look down the line, it becomes a financial risk, because artists' careers are based on making the right moves, and if they don't do so, they don't see the money in the future.
Perhaps.
Michel, how many checks have you turned down? How many times you say this isn't a partner I want to work with?
A lot of times, especially over here in Asia as well, because sometimes you get like ridiculous kind of amounts offer-wise. So always like new people stepping up in the market, they want to be in the market, and they just find people who have like a big, bag of money, and they just put it in your face like, yeah, come on, do it. So, but yeah, we turn those things mostly down. Sometimes we are looking into it further to see, could this be like a long-term partner for the future? But yeah, the question you answered, yes, a lot.
So,
How many businesses do you know where you get paid 100% upfront before you show up for the show? And you can get pink M&Ms.
I'm not answering the question.
Pink M&Ms and Dom Perignon. And wet towels.
And fruit baskets.
Fruit baskets, yeah.
So,
Or a
Jeremie,
secret juice ring.
from a trend perspective, Jeremie, what's the trajectory of earnings in Asia now? Are you seeing an upward curve?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot more activity in this region, specifically like the India region. India and UAE area seems to be really exploding. We haven't done quite as much business in China, but definitely I think Malaysia and Philippines and Thailand seem to be growing pretty quickly as well.
So a direct question for you, Alcit. Do you feel the agents are supporting the development of the scene in Myanmar and Thailand?
Yes, and especially with us, I mean, we book quite a wide variety, from top to bottom. So I think that with most agents, they know that it has to be a long game, and it's not just about coming in and going out. There's got to be a long-term strategy to whichever artist they're managing or handling.
Are there agents that you've decided not to work with?
Yes, at times. Well, I mean, like I said, some are fun, some are very difficult. It depends on, who it is, really.
But is there a logic as to why you don't work with them, or is it personality, or is it business practice? I guess that's my question.
I'd like to have as few headaches as possible. Running a festival is difficult enough, so whatever's easy and efficient, that's the way I go.
So kind of similar question to you, Jason, because I know you've got, as you said earlier, a broad view. Are there partners, agent partners that you have now after years of experience decided, I am not booking their talent because they've been abrasive or because they're expensive?
It's a necessary evil. If they have specific talent that you really want, you're going to have to deal with them. But I think what would be helpful is, I think working with agents is, agents rely on promoters, and when you look at aspirational promoters, and they're looking at that, there's no rule book on how do you book a talent. Like, you can't go online and go, how do I book an act? No one can teach you that, and there's so many nuances, and you have to make so many mistakes when you go through. I'm going to call a friend who knows a friend who can book me this DJ, or you go on Facebook and you cold call someone, and you book these acts. But if there is a way that agents can actually educate promoters and buyers, what's the process? What's the faux pas? How do you go about booking talent? What do you do? What's tax withholding? What is a landed deal? What are these things? I think that would be really helpful. And what are the goals that we're trying to achieve? Can we create win-win situations and have everyone meet the financial goals that they need to?
Cody, if you get approached by a relatively new promoter and they're clumsy or slightly naive in how they're proposing, do you guide them through a process to become more professional, or do you turn your back and run?
Well, I mean, it sounds like the sort of promoter you just described is someone I'd want to turn my back and run from. But there's new promoters out there that are young and that are less experienced, that show great promise, that we take pride in working with and guiding. And frankly, I can say we've been out here all week meeting with all sorts of different promoters, and some of the conversations we've had have been entirely geared towards guiding them as to how we can make this business better, how we can make these markets more healthy, how we can grow it together the right way. In an ideal world, I know it's said a lot, but everyone should be making money here.
Angie, if I can turn to you, about probably 3 years ago at this conference, we had a similar panel to this, but the panel consisted of festivals and clubs and promoters. And as we moved through the discussion, the club owners became increasingly more animated than the festival promoters, that the charges that between the managers and agents were placing on talent was just too high. Do you recognize that? Do you think that there is a risk that clubs are finding it harder and harder to thrive because the money that you can earn is bigger from the festivals? Do you price differently?
Yeah, you price differently, but I mean, there's some festivals that don't pay shit, and I have an artist who is no longer playing for some of those festivals because they don't pay shit. Even though it's, you know, it's a very big festival, but you know, it's you make a decision that, you know, we don't need that. You know, there's a million other festivals, and we don't need to deal with people who are assholes. So, you know, but I guess to be more direct on your question, yeah, I mean, again, it's a concern, but I really value the judgment of the booking agent in determining if we're creating a larger problem. I mean, you know, the problem is it's never about the individual, it's about the collective, it's about what's happening in the aggregate. So, you know, I don't think any artist is going to go, well, I'm going to take the hit because I'm worried about club culture generally in X market. You know, I don't want to be driving up fees because I'm concerned about the health of, you know, this territory. It just isn't kind of the thought process. So, but you know, to me, it really comes down in the agent knowing what the appropriate value in a particular market is, whether it's festival or club, and pricing it appropriately. I have to believe that, you know, if the prices are too high, then the booker isn't going to book it. You know, the market bears what the market will bear, and if it doesn't make any more sense, then, you know, they'll go to the next level down of act, or they, you know, or something else will happen. It's difficult to think about the ecosystem generally when you're looking at it so specifically.
So, Cody, are you ever conscious with your talent that you might be pricing them out of the market? And how do you, if the well dries up and the fish start to die, how do you come back from a price that's too high? How do you start to negotiate back again if demand starts to dry up?
Well, I suppose I'm blessed to have not yet been in that position with any of my artists, but you know, I think it's important that as agents, as managers, as artists, as promoters, we are all trying to work towards healthier markets, and that means more opportunities for everyone. That means, you know, weekly club nights that are successful, whether or not there's a headlining artist there or whether there's a local. That means that the culture keeps on moving forward. Yeah. You know, so am I ever pricing my artists out of a market? I don't believe I ever have. I've priced my artists out of a particular show, but there's another one around the corner that's going to be a great show, do it and turn a profit in doing so.
So can I just say something? I've been doing this for half my life, and I have no idea how value is ascertained. Can someone
the price someone's willing to pay?
Yeah. Can someone explain to me how the price is ascertained for a particular artist? How does that happen?
Question to Cody. Question to Michel. Question to David. How do you set price?
Send your best offer.
Exactly. So there's this delicate dance or a ugly dance that goes back and forth, which I don't find particularly effective, and I don't find it particularly beneficial for both parties.
Why not?
Because whoever gives out the first offer loses, right? Because you get anchored to that.
So why don't you just make lower offers?
So you end up in this dance like, what's your best offer? What can I get it for? What's your best offer? What can I get it for? And then you lowball or you highball, whichever side you're playing on. This dance that goes on for a couple of weeks or a month.
I have promoters personally whom I have the sort of relationship and trust with where we don't need to do that dance, where we can be real with one another, know where the budgets lie, where they max out, what their top artists get.
I'm not talking about you and me.
Arsit, do you have to do that dance?
Excuse me?
Do you have to do that dance of where do I start? You know,
I guess both parties do. They have to play their role, right, at the end of the day, and they want the best show for their artists, so I guess you know, it takes two to tango, and that's what we do.
Sounds like a bit of a waste of time and energy, but
not easy.
Yeah. So, Michel, turning to you, given that we hear a lot of discussion here about deals that are done, deals that aren't done, partners that aren't worked with, how beneficial is it to have an office in Asia to understand who to work with in Asia?
Yeah, that's the thing, because we have been here already in the market since the beginning of David Lewis production. So with the actual office in there is always pretty convenient, you know, also to have like a strategic point in the market, you know, to visit your clients and stuff like that. Look at the event itself. I think it's pretty important to be at the events to see, you know, what's happening over there live. But also for our relations, you know, just to drop by and stuff like that, have the cup of coffee, you know, discuss the plans. I think when you're really out there and really mingle up with the people over there, then you get more work done more easily.
Yeah. And Jeremie, just turning to you, hearing the chat about the dance and the negotiation and the low ball and the high ball and the price people are willing to pay, to what extent does Gigwell aid or remove some of that dance or make that dance more efficient?
So, I mean, that's a good question, and I think, you know, going back to the whole reason we're participating in this panel and having this discussion in the first place is there's just not very much transparency between buyers and sellers, and I think that's, you know, part of the problem. That's, you know, that's core to the problem, is that, you know, there's always this kind of veil where nobody wants to show their cards, right? And so, you know, if you look at other technology companies and how they've solved this problem, like Airbnb, for example, does it by recommending, you know, various pricing guides, like, you know, typically, you know, this property isn't available during this time, it's peak season, typically this property goes between, you know, this range and that range, you know, things like that. Not being completely transparent, but at least giving somebody a guide as to, you know, what is fair market value based on market, based on seasonality, based on, you know, historical, you know, data, things like that. I don't think that, you know, those concepts could not be applied to, you know, live entertainment. It could absolutely, you know, work the same way. And that's definitely something that, you know, we would like to explore at some point. Obviously, it's going to take participation from both sides, but, you know.
It sounds like you're 2 steps away from being the Uber of the live sector.
I mean, you know, we'll see.
So I'm interested, I think I'll turn again to you, Cody. Whenever we've had these discussions before on the stage, I tend to get a voice in the audience or a voice on the stage saying, these great big international agents, these international managers, the way in which they're working is killing the local scene, the local talent can't get through. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think everyone here can agree that we'd all like to see local talent thrive. We'd all like to see local scenes thrive. There's something that seems to happen right now in China in particular, where, you know, nightclubs will go out and they're looking for like the biggest act on a Friday or Saturday, and every week, every market, whether it's like Changsha or Nanjing or Shanghai, they all want the same thing: biggest act, biggest night. You know, it's the responsibility of the clubs, the promoters, the local population to make sure that you're developing healthy nightlife and healthy culture, that you're cultivating cool Wednesday night parties in a market that might not be able to afford your Friday night A-list talent. You know, so to say that we're doing anything that would deter the local culture from thriving, I think that's a misperception.
Andrew, you talked earlier that DJs typically aren't sat thinking about the need to create a healthy local scene and thinking about the future and balance, which, you know, is quite a stark sentence to make, especially when you're looking at pricing and you're looking at the future of relatively new and developing markets. That doesn't sound like a sustainable position, we've seen contraction in India, contraction even in North America. Is there a risk that going in for big price, big talent, biggest nights eventually has an end of the road?
Yeah, no question. I mean, I don't. I think that understanding what's going on in each market is incredibly important to the decision-making process. And if you know that a particular market is contracting, and you see, you know, an opportunity to play a show at a fair price that you know will be healthy to the scene, because, you know, this is a promoter who's been doing great things, and it's a super important show at a, you know, at a key time of year, and there's a, you know, you've been working with that promoter for 3 years and they've helped build you, you know, it's absolutely a two-way street. I think my initial point was that it's very difficult from the individual DJ perspective to be thinking about the market generally. But from a manager perspective, you know, that's a conversation that I'm gonna have with the agent. To be honest, like, I don't need to put that on my client. That's not, I mean, they're thinking about other stuff, and I don't want that to be part of the conversation that we have to have. That's a conversation I want to have with the agent, to understand what is transpiring in that market and what the health of that market is, and, you know, why we're doing it, who we're doing it with. But I think, you know, maybe the artist is thinking about, you know, what's going on generally in a particular territory, but and I'm happy to have that discussion, but I don't want to have that be part of the greater conversation that ongoing conversation that I'm having with my client. It just doesn't need to be. There's so much other stuff that I need from them, that I can remove them from that kind of thought, from that thought process and overview, and sort of keep that kind of more business grounded decision making between the agent and me.
Yeah. And Michel, how are you ensuring that you're building a sustainable market with who you work with in Asia? How are you looking at it differently to, say, the US and Europe?
Ooh, that's a good question. We also really try also to invest like in Asian talent. We signed one DJ who's from Korea, which we also try to build up, for the other way around. So I think that's also one of the more important things for the future, just to make invest in that kind of names, build it more up, give it also more opportunities, from east to west. I think that's also one of the things, because I also really think that the Asian culture really could use some more local heroes, which can also expand towards, the rest of the world.
And Jeremie, are you starting to see local heroes emerge in your system? Are you starting to see the process go and the transaction go from east to west, not west to east?
To be honest, we haven't really looked at that specifically. We definitely do see trends in, fee growing in markets based on, outside factors and, releases and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, specifically local talent emerging in Asia, I don't know.
So Jason, have you ever got to a point where you think, fuck this shit, my brand's bigger than these artists, I'm going to say no, I'm going to go local. I'm just going to change this model completely. I don't want to pay these fees, enough's enough.
Well, we already do that. So, I mean, we don't really book headliners across, whether it's Wonderfruit, Robot Heart, we don't even announce a lineup with for the future. We look at artists and we want to create an experience. We want to cultivate discovery, and we want people to have come to an experience to figure out and learn about new artists. And we're not there. My gig is not about giving you artists that you already know.
So how have you made that happen? Because the traditional view of the industry is big name, big ticket sales, big brand, big experience.
Take a lot of risk and lose a lot of money.
Do you still lose a lot of money?
Yes.
So what's the lesson?
Keep at it, and hopefully the brand grows, and if you really believe in it and there's integrity in the brand, people will catch up to it. I mean, if you look at, Ultra, EDC, a lot of these brands are now stalwarts and mega brands, they've been around for 20 years. They've been around forever. I mean, they've been through ups and downs. Insomniac, I mean, they started from nothing. So they didn't just come around out of nothing. So you have to have some integrity. You have to have believe in the brand of what it's about, and not just be transactional. I mean, a lot of these EDM festivals that are coming up, it's pretty homogenous, right? I mean, you're cookie cuttering it, and you're booking by numbers. You know, let's look at DJ Mag, whatever, and let's book it up, and let's call it whatever, Mega Festival, or like, you know, Electric something, or like whatever the fuck it is. But, you know, and let's throw a few names up there, and then, you know, there's no creativity. And what that does is creates homogeny, and then that will decimate the industry. But then with the decimation will come people that are like fed up with that shit, and they'll be like, you know what, I want to come up with something fresh.
Yeah. So Arsene, looking at your events, how important are the headliners to you, and what would happen if you took a different approach?
Well, it's essential, especially, you know, I think with most markets. But what we try to do is also give that opportunity to the up-and-coming artists, you know, within our events, and that's really important. I mean, everybody's a DJ these days, you know, so you got to pick and choose the right person and push them in the right direction. I guess it's really believing in every festival, believing in the concept that you're trying to push. And, you know, it's easy to put ABC on top and slap on a ticket price and start moving, but is that sustainable? You know, in most cases, it's not. You know, without a sponsor, I'd be dead. You know what I mean? So I think that there's two sides to the coin. I think you need to have that fair balance in all these events that you're producing.
And Cody, with that eye on the long term, and you know, we've heard it consistently for 2 days now, are you and your organization looking past the export of West to East and starting to look at the local heroes and how you can start bringing them onto the roster and how they can play a role in festivals in Asia?
You mean, are we looking at the local artists? Absolutely. Absolutely. We've got eyes on the local artists in every market in Asia where it's happening. And, you know, I think every agent and agency out there should be looking for the next one to explode. You know, there's something magical about a homegrown hero.
And what's your talent spotting process? How do you know, what's the network that you use to find the future?
Well, I mean, aside from, you know, discovering music and all the sources that we do, you know, managers, promoters, the people whom we trust who are on the ground over here, that's usually who we hear it from first. Other than that, it's the music.
And Andrew, same question for you. Have you got your eyes on Asian talent, or you know, are you looking to kind of reverse the export-import process?
I had a conversation. I've had 2 conversations about that today. One, somebody played me something that was very, very interesting in that it, you know, I think my initial discussion with him was, with this person was, you know, what I want to hear is something that's unique and different coming out of any of these Asian markets, rather than simply somebody who's producing the same stuff but happens to be from, you know, China or Thailand or wherever. And, you know, this guy said, oh, you know what, I think I have something. And he played me some music that was really impressive in its way that it was so clearly coming from this particular market in its sound, but still was incredibly current and marketable. So, yes, looking at stuff for sure.
Brilliant. And Jeremie, I just wonder, because you're looking at things from a price and a trend and a process and relationship perspective, do you see ways in which the industry could be working together differently to make everything smoother and more sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, similar to what I mentioned earlier, I think having more visibility and more transparency in the process is helpful for both sides to thrive. I mean, you know, we're kind of all in this together and all in it for the long term. And so, you know, I think those things only help enable growth on both sides. I mean, it can't be lopsided. You know, there needs to be relatively equal power distribution in order for this to keep growing. And so I definitely think that technology could enable that to happen faster.
And Jason, what do you think needs to change to ensure sustainability?
Well, I think there's a lot of different tools now. We didn't address how do you assess fair market value, and traditionally
we did. It's the price you're willing to pay.
but
It's just not fair.
No, but in all seriousness, there's two factors, right? I mean, mark-to-market rate, like real estate, and availability. But now we have tools. You know, for example, SoundCloud plays, YouTube plays. Agents provide a lot of tools that allow you to make judgments based on those statistics. For example, with Facebook, the number of likes. I mean, you could create a fake ad and see what the demos in that particular market, how many people are interested. If you divide how many people are talking about the particular artist over the number of likes, that's engagement. So there's a lot more tools that are available for people to actually make fair market value. So I think if you triangulate all the digital tools out there, plus some traditional stuff and a little bit of gut, then I guess you can make better decisions.
A lot of gut.
So I mean, it's an interesting closing point. What would happen to your business, Cody or Michel, if it became statistics driven, and if the data that Jeremie had went from being private to public, and you could see the trends on artists and a kind of the average price over the last 12 months and where that's going? Would the dance stop, and would your businesses change? Would it ever happen? Is everything that you do about the dance?
You know, I think statistics are obviously incredibly important. They're becoming more and more important. Everyone's trying to figure out how to crack looking at stats and predicting trends and figuring out who's next. But there's so many things that are intangible that you can't see from looking at, you know, Facebook likes or what have you. You know, I have an artist right now that I'm very excited about, this girl Rez. You look at any of her statistics, it makes no sense that she's doing the tickets that she's doing, but she's got this incredible cult fan base. It's connected with her on a different level, and there's nothing on paper that would show that. You know, that's gut, and that's intangible, and I think that's always going to remain incredibly important. I think that's where the biggest artists often come from.
So we should keep the algorithms away from the artist booking process, is that right?
Correct.
Well, listen, we've got time for questions. I would hope, given the content of the discussion, there will be some. Has anyone got any questions for anybody on stage? Anything controversial? Ask anything about prices, talents, booking, DJs? Go on, someone. Is that a hand up, or is that just a phone? Is that just stretching your arms? That was just stretching your arms. Fantastic. I'm going to give you like 30 seconds. There must be someone who wants to ask something. No? Okay. Going, gone. Listen, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for listening.